dear students, we are on the CEC Gurukul lecture. As we are in the series of the electronic circuits and we are discussing the various components. Now in today's lecture we discuss the various connectors which are used in the optical devices as well as in the electronic devices. So as we connect the optical fibers to each other, then what type of connector we use, and when we connect the electronic devices, that what type of electronic connectors we use. So in this lecture we will discuss the various optical fiber connectors and the electronic connectors. So splicing is the word that is used to connect the two optical fibers. So we will discuss what are the splicing and how many types of splicing are there and how it works. And we start with that, what are the splicing? Basically splicing are the optical fiber connectors which connects the or joins the two optical fibers, and these techniques are used in the optical fiber communication system, and in order to form the long optical links for better as well as the long distance optical signal transmissions. So we require to connect the two optical fibers. So through splicing we connect the two optical fibers, and these splicers are basically couplers that forms a connection between the two fibers or the fiber bundles. So splices are used. At the time of the splicing, two optical fibers, the geometry of the fibers, their proper alignment and the mechanical strength must be taken into the consideration to connect the two to connect the two optical fibers. To overcome the disadvantages of optical fiber connectors, the splicing of the optical fiber is used to maintain the permanent connections between the two optical fiber cables. Sometimes the optical fiber damage in between that, so through this splices we can connect these two wires and continuously flow of the signals through this optical fiber. So the fiber optics cables of the various lengths like more than 5 kilometer, 10 kilometer are not capable of a permanent connection and cannot run for a longer run. So we use the splicer. So it is also not suitable for the repeated connections and disconnection of the cable connection. There we use the splicer. So it is necessarily to splice the fiber optic cables with the two lengths to join the cables together that can provide the sufficient permanent connection for a longer run. It means through the splicer we can connect the two optical fiber for a better performance. So now in this lecture we discuss the splicing of the optical cables and its type. So splicing technique of the optical fiber, basically we use the three techniques for the splicing the optical fiber. Number one technique, that is the fusion splicing, and second is the mechanical splicing. And mechanical splicing are also divided into two parts. First is the V grooved splicing and second is the elastic second is the elastic tube splicing. So these are the form of the splicing. So first is the fusion splicing. In the fusion splicing, any fiber by making use of the fusion technique which provides the permanent or a long lasting contact between the two fibers, and in the fusion splicing the two fibers are thermally joined together. So by using the thermal method we join the two fusion, that means we are fusing the by using the fusing splicing to connect the two optical fibers. In this particular technique, an electrical instrument is necessarily used that act as an electric arc so as to form a thermal connection between the two. So the two fibers are aligned and butted in the way of their connections. This alignment is done by using the fiber holder. We use a fiber holder to align the two fibers for their connection. So after this the electric arc come into the action, that that will be produces some energy, that energy in the form of the heat that will butt the joint, and the heating effect melt the ends of the fiber and then the two gets bonded together. So after this the electric arc comes into the action, as when it gets switched on, when it produces some energy, and that heats the butt joint, and through this heating effect melts the ends of the fiber and then the two gets bonded together. So after the two forms a bond, then their junction is covered with either polyethylene jacket or the plastic coating will be done just to protect the joint. So you see on the screen that this is one type of the fusion splicing of the optical wire. You see, both the side we are having the fiber holder, and the in between that there is a fiber to be spliced. So when the two fiber will be spliced and the electric arc is giving to the end of the fiber where it will be connected. So as the heat reaches the fiber, it melts and it will connect each other. After that a coating will be done on it. So the fusion splicing of the optical fiber is like that. By making use of the fusion splicing technique, the splice generated the losses are very less. So the loss range lies between the 0.05 to 0.10 dB. So both in the case of the single mode as well as the multi mode optical fibers can be connected by using this fiber splicing. So the technique that provides this amount of losses is very practical and useful, and as only very little portion of the transmitted power gets lost. So when the fusion splicing is done, then the supply of the heat that is to provided must be adequate amount. So this is so because sometimes excess heat can generate fragile or delicate joint. So a particular amount of heat will be given to both the ends of the fiber. So next type of splicing is the mechanical splicing. What are this splicing? And again this mechanical splicing are categorized into the two form. First is the V-grooved splicing. This splicing technique means V-grooved splicing, where we use the V-shaped substrate is taken and that two fiber ends are butted in the groove, and once the two gets placed inside the groove in proper alignment, then they are bonded by an adhesive or index matching gel. Now you see here on the screen, this adhesive provides the proper grip. Now we put the fiber in the V groove type of the substrate. So now you see the fibers which is in the yellow color and the V groove substrate are there. There is a clamping of the fiber end. So this is the one type of the form of the mechanical splicing, and the adhesive we are using, this provides the proper grip to the connections, and the V substrate can be either composed of the plastic, silicone, ceramic or any other metal that will hold the fibers. And these fiber losses are more in case of the techniques as compared to the fusion techniques. So also these losses majorly depends on the core and the cladding diameter as well as core position and respect to the center. And it is noted here that the two fibers do not form a continuous smooth connection as it is previously discussed case, and also the joint is a semi permanent in this case, but in the fusion it will be the permanent. So next type of the splicing in the mechanical category is the elastic tube splicing. And in this type of technique, splicing the fiber with the help of the elastic tube, and the majorly finds its application in the case of the multi-mode optical fiber. So when we use the multi-mode optical fiber, we use the elastic tube splicing for the connection. So the fiber loss in this case is almost similar to that of the fusion technique, so it is better. However, the need for the equipment and skill is somewhat less than the fusion splicing technique. Now we see on the screen that this is the elastic tube splicing of the optical fiber. You see left hand side there is a fiber being inserted, and on the right hand side inserted fiber, and through this we insert the fiber into the another fiber. Here you see inserted fiber being inserted and the inserted fiber, and we insert this fiber through this elastic tube techniques. So that is a capillary tube in between that, and the axial alignment are there. So we connect the two fiber by using the elastic tube splicing, and the basically the elastic material is the rubber inside which a small hole is present, and the diameter of this hole is somewhat less than that of the diameter of the fiber to be spliced. Tapering is done the ends of both the fibers in order to allow the easily insertion inside the tube. So one fiber will be inserted into the another fiber. So when the fiber with a slightly larger diameter than the hole, it inserted inside the hole, then it eventually get expanded as a symmetrical force is exerted by the material on the fiber, and it will be easy to insert the another fiber. Due to this symmetricity, proper alignment between these two fibers is achieved, and in this method different diameter of the fiber can be spliced. As here the fiber moves according to the axis of the tube, and in this manner the connection between the two fiber can be done. What are the advantages of these fiber splicing? Why we will done? As we discussed that this splicing can be done for the connecting the optical fiber. So it allows long distance optical signals transmission. Moreover, less reflection at a time of the signal transmission, and these are some of the advantages of the fiber splicing. Splicing provides almost a permanent connection to the two fibers, so that the damage of the signals will be less. So what are the disadvantages? Sometimes the fiber losses are very much higher than that of the acceptable limits, so it will be different to achieve the actual results. Splicing increases, the overall cost of the optical fiber communication system will increases. Splicing basically provides a permanent or semi-permanent joints, and also sometimes the two fibers are joined on the temporary basis. So connecting the two optical fibers temporarily is done by the connectors. Now what are the electronic connectors? First we connect the optical fibers, now we connect the electronic connectors. You see on the screen that it is a one type of electronic connector. You see one component this is connected with the another component. So we will discuss what are these electronic connectors and how it works. So electronic connectors are the device that join electronic circuits, and they are used in assembling, installing and supplying power to the electrical devices. So connectors are an important component of every electronic equipment used in the industrial machinery, consumer electronics, communication and home and commercial appliances. These devices are often overlooked, but they play very important role in connecting the devices, and because of this the electronic products are functional and complete. So connectors plays a very important role in the electronic circuits. So most connectors are temporarily or removable, and sometimes it is permanently joined. So most connectors are temporarily or removable, some are used as a permanent electrical joints. So the two main components of an electrical connectors are its contacts and housing. So it refers to is a plug or receptacle. So we use the we can say that the housing hold the terminals and ensures the stability of their connections. So it isolates the terminals from other electronic components and prevents a short circuiting. So plugs protect the terminals from the elements and weather and are made from insulating material. That such insulating materials are used for making the connectors, such as the molded plastic or ceramics are used for the preparation of the connectors. Now additional parts that is added to the connector depending on how it will be used, and key connectors can only be inserted in the specific orientation. So a lock can be placed in the connectors and prevented from being the undone, while sealed connectors can be used underwater. So there are the various type of the connectors that we will discuss. Connector terminals are the pins that provides the continuous path for the electrical circuit to flow between the circuits, and they are made from the electrically conductive materials such as brass, phosphor, bronze, and copper and high copper alloys. So what type of the electronic connectors terminology, what are the ways where we say that these electronic connectors are developed and how it is used. So first is the electronic connector gender. Electronic connector are usually found as a pairs. One point will be inserted in the another point. So all the connectors are found in a pairs. So each half has a gender designation. The male component is called the plugs, while the female components is called the jack or the socket. So we can say that the electronic connector have the plugs and the jacket. The jack has recessed holes, and the socket holes, that is also a socket hole that contains the terminals and are connected to a wire, cable or the devices. So the terminals of the plug are inserted into the slots of the jack or the socket to enable their connection. So plugs and socket work together when we insert the. Now you see on the screen that here we are having a female connector and the male connector. Female is the plug, that is the socket, that is the D sub connectors. Now second type of connectors are the keying. Most connectors are can only be plugged in one orientation, as electric charges exhibit polarity. So keying is a feature of the electronic connectors that avoids incorrect matching orientation. So a key way prevents mechanical and electrical damage to the pins from the dangerous and incompatible connections. So keying also the advert plugging the connectors at a wrong angle or the wrong sockets. The key way helps deal with the systematical connectors. So keying are required for the systematical connection between the plug and the jack or the socket. So now you see here on the screen, here we are having a keying. So we connected, first is the male and second is the female. So we have the both the keying here, like we can see on the screen that keying are there. 3 hole is there and the 3 hole in the male side. So we insert that into the. So next is the locking mechanism. Locking mechanism holds the connectors in place during the matting. So it prevents the connectors from being displaced when dumped or the jolted. So it avoids the accidentally uncoupling of the connectors. So locking mechanism is very important. So the two connectors are connected with each other in a proper manner. So connectors during the operation, which can induce damage to the electronic circuit. So what are the locking mechanism? There are the various type of the locking mechanism in the electronic connectors, which including the push pull connectors and Boynott coupling and fine thread screw coupling. These are the most of the locking mechanism. What are the number of contacts we use? Basically the number of contact refers the number of conductive element which make an electrical connection. How many pins we require and how many contacts we require just to connect the two connectors. So the number of the contacts refers to the number of conductive element which make a element. So next is the contact pitch. Contact pitch, what is the pitch, refers to the center to center distance or adjacent pins, usually measures a millimeter. When pins are arranged in an array, the pitch between the rows and the columns can be different. So the contact pitch affects the compatibility of the connectors. A large pitch means the fewer terminals per connectors area, which reduces the tendency of the electrical arcing. And electrical arcing basically happens when the current jumps from the one pin to the another, especially for the pins are of the too close to each other. Now you see on the screen that there is a contact pitch which are used for the connection. Next is the pin numbering, that is defined here in the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Each pin has a number. So each pin of an electrical connector is serialized. A number of assigned to the specific pin based on the sequence designated by the standards. The integrated circuits, the pins are numbered as a anti-clock direction. The pin sequence basically a specific sequence which is given. A specific set of the pins must be plugged first before inserting the another set. The factors affecting the mating cycles including the connectors and plating, thickness, resistance, threshold and many more. And mount refers to how the electronic connectors is placed or mounted to an electrical devices. The mounting types are board mounting and the panel mount or the cable mount or the surface mount. Surface mount basically edge mount. So these are the basically the board mount, that is a surface mount, panel mount or the cable mount. Termination refers to how the terminals are connected. Strain relief is a fitting or the bushing that dissipates the forces acting on the electronic connectors to prevent the stress and damage on the connectors and make it mechanically stable. So other basic important key factor in this connector is the performance. The performance parameter refers to the condition in which the electronic connectors is designed to operate safely. So these parameters include the current rating, voltage rating and temperature rating, minimum and maximum operating temperature. It depends on the connector which we are preparing. So up to now we have discussed the connectors. In the further lecture we will discuss the various type of the connectors and what are these applications, how we can prepare these connectors. Thank you very much.